I love you. I love you. It's easy enough to say, isn't it? But certainly loving one another, as Jesus teaches us, is a principle that has arguably gone out of fashion. You can look at the declining number of confessing or practicing Christians, the waning attendance of churches and worship groups. It shows a lack of love for God. Look at the divorce rates and the disturbing prevalence of domestic violence. It shows a lack of love between partners. The abundance of war and civil conflict exemplifies a lack of love for neighbour. Statistics around youth mental illness speak volumes about a society that does not encourage self-love or self-esteem. I would argue that the natural human inclination is to love. Look at the way a baby smiles at its mother's voice. Look at the way children pet and feed animals. You see, love is a pre-existing genetic condition written into our DNA, stamped out with age, with experience, with social conditioning, and with passing generations. Love is in genuine danger of becoming a byword. The way that the word blessed, a word that once carried noble and holy connotations of being chosen and supported by God and his ministers, has been reduced to a hashtag on social media. #blessed. Count one's blessings by all means, but parading them around the internet smacks of a deep need for gratitude and for God's presence in one's life. We have lost the love of God because with each passing generation we are not demonstrating how to love God, because we are demonstrating neither love of neighbour nor love of self. I don't mean pampering oneself or saying, "Oh, aren't I so wonderful?" Self-love is the clarity of vision in seeing what our true purpose, our true identity is. And a large part of this clarity comes from prayer, from contemplation, from listening to God. You see, it all links up. It's not to say we will only truly love ourselves if we love God, or love our neighbour if we love ourselves. Love is not as instantaneous as we would like. Love is a process. As Jesus tells us, love is a process of abiding. Now we have a very interesting rundown of love from the reading today from the first letter of John. Everyone who believes Jesus is the Christ has been born of God. The first line, but not the first step. If we are to look at love as a process of abiding, we need to take this first line as the end goal, because it speaks of the relationship of holding these three in balance: love of God, love of neighbour, love of self. God knows that we are born as his children, but we are not born knowing the fullness of God, such that we can immediately call him Father, Mother, or other term of guardianship. Everyone who loves the parent loves the child. Now, we love God through loving our neighbour, as demonstrated by the life, ministry, and sacrifice of Jesus. The way he gives everything he has. To whom? To those who desert him, those who despise him, those who misunderstand him. We can't love every single person at face value, but we can learn to approach life, approach others, and approach God from a stance, an attitude of grounding love. This is part of the process of abiding. Love is learned. Love is explored. Often we are surprised by what love actually looks like. It's not something you'll find on dating apps. It's not something you'll find on a Hallmark card. It's not something we should take for granted. Real love, as I say, is grounding, is centering. It prepares us. It steadies us. Just as God's very essence is love, our resting attitude must be love. It must become love. By this, John continues, we know that we love the children of God when we love God and obey his commandments. And his commandments are not burdensome, for whatever is born of God conquers the world. Let me use another word for this resting attitude. Discipline. A discipline of love. Love is respect, reverence even, born out of obedience, not being a pushover, but learning to take stock of what really matters. With people so readily available to date each other from all corners of the world, it becomes easy to lose perspective. Love becomes more about meeting a need rather than compromise, filling a void rather than abiding. We cannot have total free rein on what we think love is, because we start to lose bits or even essential parts of ourselves. Relationships become one-sided. Obedience isn't capitulation or assuming a role, but approaching relationship with humility and discipline, with the good of both parties in mind, with the aim of self-discovery in mind. Surface-level attraction, which has become a shockingly prevalent aspect of modern culture, in objects and experiences as well as people, this cannot be our guiding light. Because unlike the love of God, it does become burdensome. Leaping from fad to fad, attraction to attraction, it becomes an addiction. It becomes a role to fulfill. It becomes a hunger to satisfy without ever truly achieving that satisfaction. We lose ourselves, and we no longer love ourselves. As such, we then go on to treat our neighbours as objects. We go on to treat God as a joke. Love happens freely, provided we approach it as a life-giving discipline, provided we make it our mantra, provided it is the pulse that permeates our living. Obedience, reverence to a force we cannot control, but adds to our good rather than our troubles. A force so strong that it indeed conquers the world. Not a world that we have ordered, but one that God has ordered. The world isn't everything outside the bubble of the church. The world, by definition, is a culture contrary to God's abiding love. Hatred and rejection are the world. Abuse and ostracism are the world. We made these. That which God has made will persevere, will abide, will change the culture of any given people from one of judgment to one of acceptance, resisting that which God has made is evidence of a severe lack of love. As love of this kind is disciplined, affirming, educative, and transformational. The Christian nature of love, as John then rightly points out, is the belief in Jesus Christ because it testifies to a living, loving God. It testifies to this threefold discipline of love for God, neighbour, and self. This is the one who came by water and blood, Jesus Christ. That is, Jesus is not an abstract concept, nor is love, nor is baptism. He came to us by blood as well as water. He was born as one of us. He is tangible, fragile even, as we are fragile, and deserving of love and protection as we are all deserving. And yet the presence of water points to Jesus as the wisdom of creation, the Word that was in the beginning with God, the abiding Word. The presence of the Spirit points to the truth of the abiding Word insofar as it is abiding. Water and blood and Spirit, God and man and the essence of love that unites them, that unites our nature to the nature of God. Jesus came so that we might explore what love is. It's not as simple as saying, I love you. The I love you is the end goal, not the beginning. The beginning is saying, I want to learn to love you. I don't understand you. I don't understand myself. I don't understand what part God has in all of this. But I want to stick with it until it starts to become clear. I want to abide in you. And this is what Jesus is saying to us about love, teaching us how to abide, how to persevere with love, how to be patient, how to be intentional with love. I want to abide in you, and I want you to abide in me. Learn to understand me. Learn to understand yourself. Learn to understand God. This is the discipline that unburdens us. Approaching life with this mantra, I want to love you. I want to learn what it means to love you. Approaching self, approaching neighbour, approaching God. With Jesus' help through the wisdom of his sacrifice for me, I want to learn what it means to love you.